In this video, we're still going to work with ellipses, and we want to actually find the standard equation of an ellipse. And once again, we want to recall that using the formula x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared equals 1, if we're looking at a horizontal axis, remember that's based on the a value, the a squared, and that's going to always be the bigger number. And it's going to be vertical if the bigger number for a squared is below the y minus k squared. And then also, we want to remember that down here, c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared. So if we're given the following information where we have the center of a circle, and the center of the circle happens to be the origin at 0, 0, and they also tell us the vertices, which are 0 and positive and negative 8, and we're also given the foci, which happen to be 0 plus or minus 4. So to start off, we want to actually go ahead and try to graph a little bit of the ellipse based on the given information. So we know that we have the center is at 0, 0. We know the vertices are at 0 plus and minus 8, so we're going to go up to a positive 8 and down to a negative 8. And we also have the foci, which are located at positive 4 and negative 4. So simply based on this, we know that our ellipse is going to have some type of shape of this form. Whoops, do that a little bit better here. We're going to curve around this way. So basically what this is telling us, we're going to have a major axis that is going to be vertical. So what that tells us is we're going to be using this formula here. So we would have x minus h squared over b squared plus y minus k squared over a squared equals 1. So the a squared is our key for this being a major vertical axis. So what do we need to know? Well, there's basically 4 things we need to know, and from this we need to know h and k, which we actually know what h and k are. H and k is going to be the center, and then we need to know what is b squared and a squared. Well, we can easily find a squared because a squared is going to be the distance, remember, well, not a squared, but a is the distance from the center out to your vertex. So if we go from one of the vertices to the center, that is our a value, which is going to be equal to 8. And then, of course, if we go from the center to the focus, then that's going to be our c value. So in this case, c has to be equal to 4. So we know the value of a and the value of c, which means we can solve for b. And remember, the b value is actually how far we're going to go out to this point, which at this time we don't know what this value is going to be equal to, but this is actually the value of b here. So if we go to our formula, we know that c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared. So c squared, we would have 4 squared is equal to 8 squared minus b squared. So we would have 16 is equal to 64 minus b squared. And if we subtract 64, we would get 16 minus 64, which would be a negative 48 is equal to a negative b squared. And if we multiply both sides by a negative, then we would have b squared is equal to a positive 48. Now, if we look at the formula, I don't need to really solve any further because we're actually looking for b squared. So we can just leave this here as 48. So if we substitute into the formula here, we would have x minus h, which is up here going to be 0 squared, and that's all over b squared. Well, b squared we just found to be 48 minus y minus 0 squared, because our k value up here is 0, and that's divided by a squared. Well, if a is equal to 8, 8 squared would be 64, and that would be equal to 1. Because h and k are 0, we could simply write this as x squared over 48 plus, whoops, this should be a plus here, plus y squared over 64 equals 1. So here we have the standard equation for the ellipse that is centered at the origin, vertices of plus or minus 0 plus or minus 8, and your foci of 0 plus or minus 4. Okay, let's look at one more example. We want to once again find the standard form of the equation, and this time we're also given the center, which is at the origin. We're also given the foci, which is located at plus or minus 2 and 0. And this time we're given the major axis with a length of 10. So once again, we want to start out with looking at a sketch. So we can find the center, which we know here is at the origin. Now, the foci are plus or minus 2, so that means we're going to go out positive 2 and to the left negative 2. And we know that the major axis has a length of 10. Well, remember, we know here that this is going to have to be, based on the foci, we know we're going to have a horizontal axis. So the major axis here has a length of 10, which means if we go halfway, we would simply take 10 divided by 2, which would be 5, and that would give us our A value. So we would have to go out to positive 5, because remember we're going from the center outwards, and then we would go to a negative 5, and there we would have our vertices, and of course then the ellipse would look something similar to this. So we know the value of a, which would mean in this case a squared would be equal to 5 squared, which is 25. We have our h and k, and because we know what the foci is, we know that they are 2 and negative 2, then we know the distance from here to here is 2, and remember that is the value of c. So based on that, we can find the b value, and if we go to do that, we know that we would have c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared. Just like we did in the previous example, then we would have 2 squared is equal to 5 squared minus b squared. Or simply we would have 4 equals 25 minus b squared. And if we subtract 25, 4 minus 25 would be a negative 21 equals a negative b squared. So that means a positive b squared is equal to a positive 21. And we can simply plug into our formula. Now, because this one is going to be horizontal, we're going to use x minus h squared over a squared. So the a squared is under the x minus h plus y minus k squared over b squared is equal to 1. So if we substitute in, we know that, once again here, we know that our h and k are 0 because of being centered at the origin. So x minus 0 would just be simply x squared over a squared. And we know that a squared from up here, we calculated that to be 25. And then we would once again have y squared over b squared, which we found to be 21. And we have our standard form of the equation. X squared over 25 plus y squared over 21 equals 1. So keep in mind, anytime you're asked to find the standard equation of an ellipse, there's really 4 parts we need to know. We need to know h and k, which would be the center of the ellipse, and then we need to know the value of a, which would be the distance from the center to the vertices, and we need to know the value of b, which the value of b is going to be half of your minor axis. But again, we have the formula over here. If we know a and c, then we can use this formula, c squared equals a squared minus b squared, to solve for the missing value. And of course, value of c, the value of c is the distance from the center to your foci.